My little one-bedroom in Raleigh wasn't much, but it was mine, and my shepherd mix, Luna, made it feel alive. That night started like any other. The neighbors watered their lawns. Somewhere down the block, a kid was practicing drums out of rhythm. I grabbed my takeout, clipped on Luna's leash, and we took our usual loop through the neighborhood. We passed the house with the overgrown magnolia, a couple arguing about sprinklers, the neighbor's old Buick. Normal. The kind of normal that makes you forget anything bad could ever happen. When we reached my front steps, Luna stopped cold. Tail down. Hackles up. A sound came from her throat I almost didn't recognize. A low growl she saved for when something was truly off. "Come on, drama queen," I said, giving the leash a tug. But she wouldn't move. When I finally coaxed her forward, a draft hit me the second I opened the door. It was cooler inside. Strange for a place that'd been locked all day. Still, I brushed it off. I was tired, and tired nurses explain everything away. Probably the AC, you forgot to close the vent, you're overthinking. I dropped my keys into the bowl on the table and kicked off my shoes. "Luna?" I called. She stayed by the door, staring down the hallway. No wag. No movement. Something about her stillness pressed on me harder than any noise could. "Hello?" I said into the empty house. Nothing. I did a quick sweep. Kitchen, bathroom, closet. Everything looked fine, but my pulse was too aware of itself. Every sound stood out like it had been highlighted. When I reached the bedroom, Luna crept behind me. I flipped the light switch. The room looked exactly the same. Bed made, blinds closed, candle on the nightstand. But Luna lowered herself, belly brushing the rug, eyes fixed under the bed. She growled again, low but constant. "Hey," I whispered, half joking, half begging her to stop. "It's fine. There's nothing." Then I realized she wasn't even blinking. I told myself to laugh, to check, to just prove there was nothing. My knees hit the rug. I lifted the bed skirt. A man's face, inches from mine. He lay flat, cheek pressed to the floor, staring like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. His hand twitched near a backpack. I didn't think. I moved, grabbed Luna's leash, and bolted. The sound of him crawling out from under the bed followed me down the hall. A thud, then footsteps. The back door slammed open as we tore through the front. I didn't feel the ground until I hit the grass barefoot. 911, I gasped into my phone, shaking. By the time police arrived, my whole block was awake. Neighbors standing on porches, lights on in every window. Inside, officers found the bedroom window pried open, lock broken. The backpack was still under the bed. Inside, duct tape, rope, a knife, and a small camera with a dead battery. One of the officers looked at Luna and said, "She probably saved your life." I just nodded. I couldn't look at the bed anymore. I didn't stay that night. I didn't stay any night after that. I packed what I could, took Luna, and crashed on a friend's couch for 3 weeks. Then I found a new apartment and swore I'd never live on a first floor again. But leaving didn't erase it. Every creak in the floor, every noise from the vents, it all came alive. I started sleeping with a flashlight beside my bed and wedges under every door. The first week in the new place, I woke up to Luna pacing at 2 a.m. I sat up, with my heart hammering, but it was nothing. Just the elevator down the hall. Still, I couldn't go back to sleep. People told me, "You're safe now. He's gone." Maybe. But safety doesn't reset just because someone says so. I kept replaying that moment under the bed. His face wasn't monstrous. It was ordinary. That's what stuck with me. Those were the kind of eyes you could pass at a grocery store and never think twice about. It's worse that way. Realizing danger doesn't always look like danger. Police never caught him. They said he'd likely been watching me for weeks, learning my schedule. Maybe he saw me take Luna out every evening, noticed the pattern, and waited. Routine, I've learned, can make you predictable. Predictable can make you prey. After that, I stopped taking the same route home from work. Parked in different spots. Stopped posting when I got off shift. It wasn't paranoia. It was maintenance, like taking vitals on my own life. I changed how I looked at space, too. I used to think home was a place you filled with comfort. Now I think it's something you defend. Luna sleeps near the bedroom door these days. She's older, but every time she lets out that low rumble, I listen. No arguing, no brushing it off. People ask if I ever got another candle like the one I had on my nightstand, the sea salt one I always burned before bed. I didn't. The smell brings it back too clearly. Now I burn cedar. Something solid. Something that smells like it could hold its ground. Sometimes coworkers at the hospital will say, "You live alone? That must be peaceful." I smile and tell them, mostly. They don't know how much meaning that word can hold. I still keep a sticky note on the inside of my front door. It started as a joke, but it's become a rule. Trust the dog. Below it, in smaller writing, I added one night when the silence got too heavy. Trust yourself too. I'm the kind of person who treats showers like concerts. Curtain closed, playlist up, shampoo bottle as a microphone. I know every horror movie says, don't do that. But honestly, the only scary thing about my place was the rent. It was late. I'd been at the art studio for hours, came home covered in charcoal dust, and promised myself a 10-minute shower before crashing. My bathroom was nothing fancy, tiny, old, but clean. White tiles, a little frosted window that didn't open, a curved shower rod, and a gray and white curtain I'd picked because it looked grown up. Music on, steam up. I stepped in, letting the water drown out the world. Then the curtain brushed my shoulder. I thought nothing of it at first, maybe steam, air pressure, or some weird draft. I laughed at myself. Okay, physics, relax. But a few minutes later, it brushed me again. This time it felt different, like something had moved behind it. I stopped singing and turned off the water. The sudden silence made the room sound smaller. I stood there dripping, listening. No fan running, no open window, just the faint drip of water from the shower head. All right, I said, not creepy at all. I peeked over the curtain. Everything looked normal. The counter, the towel rack, the mint green bath mat. Nothing out of place. I turned the water back on, but now I was hyper aware of everything. The sound of the rings sliding, the curve of the curtain, the space behind me. When I looked down, I realized the curtain wasn't fully closed anymore. The inner edge hung slightly outward, like someone had pulled it to peek inside. That wasn't from steam. My heartbeat kicked up. I turned off the water again, pushed the curtain flat, and whispered, "It's fine." But I couldn't leave it at that. I slowly pulled the curtain open and found nothing. Just the empty bathroom, warm and fogged with steam. Still, something was off. I stepped out, wrapped the towel too tight around myself, and grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight. Then I saw the window in my bedroom, half open. I froze. I never opened that window. The lock was stiff and needed a shove to move, and I hadn't touched it in weeks. The towel suddenly felt useless. I shut the bathroom door, backed into the hallway, and stared at that open window like it might blink. Then I heard footsteps. Outside. On the stairs. The metal steps that lead to my apartment make a distinct squeak on the second one from the top. I knew that sound. I heard it now. Slow. Steps climbing to my door. I didn't move. The sound stopped right outside. Someone was standing there. No knock, no voice, just waiting. I grabbed my phone and hovered over 911. My hand was shaking and my brain was arguing with itself. Call? Don't call? What if it's just a neighbor? But neighbors don't stand still in silence at your door at midnight. Before I could decide, the shadow under the door moved away. The steps creaked again. Down this time. Then, nothing. I waited a full minute before I exhaled. Then I locked the deadbolt, the chain, and the tiny secondary latch for good measure. I checked the window, still open. I closed it, struggled with the lock until it clicked, then pulled the blinds shut. I didn't sleep much that night. I left every light on, music low, trying to convince myself it was all explainable. Air pressure, my imagination, anything. The next morning, the sun came in clean and warm. Everything looked safe again, normal even. Then I called maintenance. The manager said she'd send someone to check the window. Her voice was cheerful, unconcerned, the kind of tone people use when they don't really believe you. 2 police officers came that afternoon. They were kind but neutral, probably used to paranoid college kids. One checked the lock and said, "This is loose. Someone could open it from outside with a flat tool if they tried." "Did they?" I asked. He shrugged. "Hard to say. You said you heard footsteps?" "Yes." And the curtain moved. That part sounded ridiculous out loud. He wrote it down anyway. They told me to get a better window latch and maybe a door bar for my front door. The older officer said, "You'd be surprised how many people just test handles." That phrase stuck in my head. Just test handles. They left. Maintenance replaced the lock the next day. I bought a wedge for my door and one of those stick-on alarms for the window. For weeks, I couldn't shower without checking every corner of the apartment first. I started leaving music playing in the living room instead of the bathroom, so I could hear if anything else moved. Eventually, I moved to a new place. But I never stopped thinking about that night. I've worked remotely for years, which means my apartment isn't just home, it's my entire world. One room for working, one for sleeping, endless video calls, and coffee refills that never seemed to end. I liked it that way. Until the night my laptop camera turned on by itself. It was raining, like it always is in Seattle, tapping against the window while I exported files past midnight. I leaned back in my chair, ready to shut the lid, when the little green LED above my webcam blinked once, just a quick flash, then went dark. It wasn't long enough for a video call, just a flicker. I stared at it for a second and thought, Chrome's being weird again. Restarted. Worked fine. I didn't think much of it. The next night, though, it blinked again. I'd been getting ready for bed, walking past my desk, when that green light winked at me through the darkness. Just once, quick enough to make me question if I'd imagined it. The lock screen glowed. No apps open, no Zoom calls, no alerts. I checked camera permissions. Every app was blocked. Everything looked normal. Still, I couldn't explain it, but it got under my skin. The next afternoon, while reorganizing some assets, I noticed a new folder on my desktop. No name, just a random string of numbers and letters. The timestamp read 3:42 a.m. I hadn't been awake then. Inside the folder were 9 video files. Short clips, 6 to 15 seconds each. The thumbnails looked dark and grainy. When I clicked one, my breath caught. It was a video of me, in bed, asleep. The camera was angled from my desk facing the bed. I watched myself shift under the blanket before the video cut off. I couldn't move for a few seconds. The latest video was from last night, the night the LED blinked while I was getting ready for bed. I unplugged the Wi-Fi router, slammed the lid shut, and called the only person I knew who might actually understand what was happening. My friend Ben. He's a cybersecurity guy. Hoodie, caffeine, a walking firewall. When he answered, I said, "Please tell me webcams can randomly record while closed." "Not unless someone tells them to," he said flatly. "Unplug everything. I'm on my way." He showed up 10 minutes later with a Pelican case full of gadgets and ran every test imaginable. Booted my Mac from an external drive, scanned for unsigned apps, network sniffers, background tasks. When he finished, he looked at me grimly. "You installed something recently?" "Just a Chrome plugin for batch downloading assets," I said. "It was recommended on Reddit." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, about that. Turns out the plugin wasn't what it claimed to be. It had been sold, rebranded, and quietly updated with hidden code that gave remote access to the webcam. It wasn't full-time streaming, just small bursts. Sampling. That's why the clips were short. The weird part," Ben said, "is that whoever did this didn't care about your work. They just wanted to know they could see you." He cloned the drive, quarantined the infected files, and took the laptop for deeper analysis. I bought a new one the next morning. Still, that night, the feeling stuck with me, that crawling sense of being observed. I taped over the new webcam, locked my door, and tried to sleep. When I finally woke, I noticed a strange message on my monitor. It said, in block letters, "Cute plant, smile face." My heart stopped. I hadn't written it. I hadn't had anyone over in weeks. My desk plant, a small pothos, was visible in every meeting I had. I joked about it once on a call. Whoever wrote that note had been watching me long enough to get the joke. I tore the apartment apart, checked every closet, every vent, under the bed, inside drawers. Nothing. No hidden cameras. No bugs. Nothing out of place. Except that note. Ben came back later that day. When I showed it to him, he frowned. "You sure you didn't write it?" "Positive." He ran more scans. Nothing new turned up. That night, I left the living room lamp on and sat awake listening to the building creak. At 4 a.m., the hallway light outside flicked off, then back on. Probably a power blip, but when you're already on edge, everything feels intentional. I didn't sleep again until morning. The next day, Ben texted, "Found the source." The extension connected to a remote server through a second domain. The videos were uploaded, then deleted. Deleted, I typed back. At least locally. Whoever did this already moved them. There'd be no way to know who'd seen them or how many people had access. That thought haunted me. Someone, somewhere, had watched me sleep. And now those clips existed in a corner of the internet that doesn't forget. A few weeks later, I moved apartments. New locks, new Wi-Fi, new everything. I even pointed the webcam toward a blank wall. But the damage was already done. I'd wake up to the hum of the fridge and think it was a recording device. I'd see the green light of my router and feel watched. The rational part of me knew it was over. The rest of me wasn't sure. Because whoever they were, they knew exactly how to look. Months passed before I could even open my old laptop again. When I did, Ben had wiped everything and saved the clean files to an external drive. I thought about throwing the machine away, but decided to keep it. Like a scar you can point to. Then one afternoon, while setting up my new workspace, I noticed something strange. My new webcam light flicked on for half a second. I froze. Then the firewall popped up with an alert. Process attempting camera access. Blocked. It was a trusted app, one I'd used for years. I clicked deny and stared at that little green light until it dimmed completely. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it wasn't. All I know is I've learned to treat every camera like a door and never assume I'm the only one holding the key. I used to think thunderstorms were cozy, the kind that roll in thick and slow, where rain taps the windows like static and lightning glows behind the curtains. Nights like that made my apartment feel like a little world of its own, safe, sealed, familiar. That night, I was working late, as usual. Freelance design means your deadlines are yours to suffer through. My lamp cast a soft pool of light across the table, and a mug of half-cold tea steamed lazily beside my laptop. Outside, the rain came in constant sheets. The sky lit up in quick flashes every few seconds, and thunder kept a low pulse. My neighbor across the street, Mr. Ellis, had his porch light on like always, a tiny golden landmark across the wet dark. Then, in one heartbeat, everything in my apartment went black. Not the street, not the houses next door, just mine. The first flash of lightning proved it. Everyone else's lights stayed on. Mine were the only ones out. I gave a little nervous laugh. Okay, breaker. No big deal. I grabbed my phone for light. The storm outside kept flashing like a malfunctioning camera, but inside it was dead silent. Even the fridge hum was gone. The breaker box was in the basement. I hated that basement. It was narrow, unfinished, and had this constant damp smell that even bleach couldn't fix. But I'd gone down there dozens of times before. It wasn't scary. It was just old. Still, something about the house felt different. The air was thicker. It's hard to explain, but it felt different, like someone else had already been breathing it. When I reached the kitchen, my light caught the basement door, and my stomach dropped like a stone. It was open. That door was always latched. Always. It had this tiny hook-and-eye lock that liked to rattle when the wind hit the back steps. I kept it closed for peace of mind, but now it hung open. Probably the wind, I thought, knowing full well the wind can't unlatch metal. Still, I pushed the door wider and called down, "Hello?" Nothing. Just the muted hiss of rain through the walls. I told myself I was being ridiculous and started down. The air got colder the farther I went, and that basement smell, wet cement and old detergent, was sharper tonight. And underneath it, gasoline. Faint, but there. I swung the light around. My dehumidifier sat unplugged, its cord stretched across the floor. A few other cables, my surge protector, and extension cord were dragged toward the little window near the ceiling. It looked like someone had been pulling them from outside. A nervous chuckle slipped out. That's not possible. But when I reached for one, it shifted slightly, like it had been resting under tension. The prongs were halfway out of the socket. I pushed it back in. My hands felt clumsy. That's when my phone light flickered. Just a pulse. But it was enough to send a jolt through my chest. Then lightning flashed through the basement window, bright enough to light the whole room. And in that flash, I saw something outside. A shape, like a shoulder moving past the glass. I held my breath, waited for another flash, but it didn't come soon enough, and I wasn't about to stand there counting seconds. I turned toward the stairs and froze halfway up. Light. From above. The living room lamp was on. I hadn't touched it. A second later, footsteps. Slow, solid, unmistakably human. I couldn't make myself move. My brain was blank noise. The footsteps crossed the living room, into the hallway, then stopped over the kitchen. Right above me. I backed down the stairs, phone trembling in my hand. I crouched behind the furnace, gripping the phone tight enough to make it creak. My breath sounded huge. The light upstairs clicked off. I don't know if it was real or if my ears filled in what I feared, but I swear I could hear someone standing by the basement door, just listening. My thumb found 911. Columbus Police, what's your emergency? I kept my voice low. Someone's in my apartment. The dispatcher's tone changed instantly. Where are you right now? In the basement. The door's open. They're upstairs. Stay on the line, she said. Officers are on their way. Can you see or hear them now? I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. Upstairs, something moved again. A faint clink, like a glass touching the counter. Then slow steps toward the front door. The latch clicked. The door opened. The rain got louder for a moment, and then the door shut. Silence. The dispatcher kept me talking until I heard the sirens. When the officers arrived, I told them the key was on a hook by the washer, and they came through the bulkhead door. When they found me behind the furnace, one of them said softly, "You're safe now." But that word didn't fit. They searched every room. The windows were shut, but on the kitchen counter, my water glass had been moved closer to the edge, and the latch to the basement door was twisted sideways, bent slightly, like someone had grabbed it too hard. Outside, near the breaker box, the rain had turned the soil into dark mud. One officer crouched beside it, shining his light. "Boot prints," he said. Half washed, but clear enough. Whoever it was had been standing there in the storm, close enough to touch the side of the house. They took a report, told me to stay somewhere else if I could. I said I would. I didn't. I told myself I'd just keep every light on until morning, and I did. I sat on the couch and just kept looking at the empty space by my window, expecting movement that didn't come. The officers had left their card, but there wasn't much they could do. Maybe a power surge, they'd said. Except surges don't unlatch doors or leave footprints. That afternoon, I went outside to see the breaker box for myself. I hadn't really looked at it in daylight before. The lock was still there, but scratched, like someone had tried to pry it with a tool. That night, I didn't turn off a single light. I texted a friend, said I was fine. I wasn't. The next few days blurred. I went through motions: work, grocery store, dishes. A city electrician stopped by the following week to fix a neighbor's wiring. I asked him how hard it would be to cut power to one unit without affecting the rest of the street. Depends on the setup. These old places? Easy if you know where the service disconnect is. Could someone outside the building do it? He smiled like it was a weird question. Sure, if they know what they're doing. That answer sat heavy for the rest of the day. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way the back steps creaked 2 beats after I used them, as if they were catching up. The way the motion light sometimes didn't trigger until I was halfway across the yard. Small things. Maybe nothing. But once something cracks your sense of safety, everything echoes through it. I moved 6 months later. Not far, just to a newer building with sealed windows and an indoor breaker box. I told people I wanted more sunlight, but the truth was simpler. I wanted fewer explanations that started with maybe. Still, sometimes during storms, I'll look at the walls and imagine the power cutting again. I'll picture that window, that pulled cord, those boot prints half erased by rain. And every time, I get the same thought. How easy it was for one person to reach through the walls of my life and flip the world off, like a switch. I don't love storms anymore. I still admire them, but I don't relax. It was a Tuesday night, late summer. The kind of quiet evening that feels safe just because it's boring. I'd finished a long shift at the dental office and was sprawled on the couch with a plate of reheated pasta letting some forgettable Netflix show fill the silence. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt to have the apartment to myself. My roommate was out of town visiting family, and I actually liked the silence. No small talk, no clinking dishes, no background noise except the hum of the fridge and the soft hiss of the swamp cooler. Around 10:30, I muted the TV for a second to check my phone, and then I noticed it. A strip of light glowing under the bathroom door. The problem was, I hadn't been in there since I took a shower before dinner. The light had been off. I was sure of it. For a moment, all I could do was stare, hoping for some sign it wasn't what I thought. Maybe I'd left it on earlier without realizing. Maybe the bulb flickered on somehow, faulty wiring or something. Still, I'd lived there 3 years. That light never turned itself on before. I called out just to be sure. Hello? Nothing. I tried again, half laughing at how ridiculous I felt talking to a closed door. Hey, anyone in there? The light clicked off, instantly. Then came the sound of metal sliding into place. The lock turning. My first thought was that it had to be a trick of sound. Maybe the neighbors, maybe the pipes. But no, the bathroom was 10 feet away, and the click was clean. I sat there frozen, watching the dark strip where the light had been. I stood up slowly, trying to keep my movements quiet. My heartbeat felt too loud in my ears. I grabbed the remote and muted the TV completely. Silence. No footsteps, no water running, no sound at all from behind the door. The door was closed tight. I reached out, hesitated, and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. No breathing, no movement, just stillness. I backed away, grabbed my phone from the couch, texted my roommate, "Hey, did you leave the bathroom light on before you left?" No reply. He was probably asleep, 2 time zones away. I turned on the hallway light just to have something between me and the dark. My mind ran through every possibility. Maybe someone had broken in earlier while I was at work and had been hiding. The lock sound made sense if they were trying to keep me out. But then, why turn the light on? After 5 minutes of silence, I decided I needed to know. I grabbed the heaviest thing in reach, an old umbrella stand, and knocked. Hard. "Whoever's in there, I'm calling the cops." Silence. Then a sound I still can't fully describe. Not movement exactly. More like a faint scrape, something brushing the tile floor. That's when I called 911. The dispatcher told me to leave the apartment immediately and wait for officers outside. I grabbed my keys, slipped on my shoes, and bolted out the front door. I remember my hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone once on the steps. 2 police cars arrived in minutes. They searched the apartment top to bottom. Every closet, every cabinet. The bathroom door was still locked from the inside. One of the officers forced it open. There was no one there. The small window above the shower was cracked open, just enough for someone to squeeze through, if they were small and desperate. The curtain was half pulled, and on the floor was a single wet footprint, bare, angled toward the window. Whoever it was had been in there quietly, long enough to wait until I noticed. They dusted for prints but didn't find anything useful. The officer said it looked like the intruder came in through the same window and must have been hiding, maybe since earlier that day. They couldn't say how long. Nothing was stolen. Not a thing. My wallet, laptop, everything was untouched. That somehow made it worse. Because if they didn't break in to take anything, then what did they want? For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without every light on. Every creak made me tense up. I replaced the bathroom lock and nailed the window shut, but I still found myself staring at that door whenever I passed it. Even now, years later, I still live with the habit. I check the bathroom every night before bed. Once you see light under a door that shouldn't be on, you don't ever trust darkness the same way again. If you also thought the scariest part wasn't being alone, but realizing you weren't, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me which of these stories hit you hardest tonight. And if you think staying home is bad, wait until you see what happens when people go where they shouldn't. Click now to watch 4 disturbing, true, trespassing horror stories. Because sometimes abandoned is just another word for occupied differently. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.